I'm going to get started right away. So I'm going to pass off this event to our moderator, Sissy Oldner, in just a moment, but I would personally like to thank everybody from Women Organizing Women Democrats for attending this evening, and thank Mr. Jaworski as well. Sissy, the floor is yours.
All right. Thanks so much, Debbie. And thank you so much for putting all of this together. I'm happy, very, very happy to do this. First, I want to get a welcome from each of the clubs that are participating, which WOW Dems, which we've already talked about, the Plano area Democrats, McKinney area Democrats, which is my club, Allen Democrats, the Anna Melissa Democrats, the Frisco Democrats, and the Collin County Young Democrats. And representatives from each of those clubs, if y'all will put our website link into the chat, I would love to have everybody talk, but I think we're in the interest of time, we're gonna just, if y'all could put that in the chat so that if anybody wants more information, they could go get it. They could go get it from your website. Briefly, I want to talk a little bit about how I know Joe Jaworski, and it's a little bit of a funny story. Anybody that knows me knows I am born and raised in Galveston, Texas, and I until recently owned a home there, and absolutely part of who I am. And Joe Jaworski was mayor long after I was gone, but he was the mayor of Galveston. And I believe during the time of Ike, when in the Ike recovery, which was a really critical time for Galveston, and I'm sure he'll get into that. But when I saw that Erica Greider, a journalist, wrote a great story about Joe in the Houston Chronicle, and I was tickled pink to see that he was announcing his candidacy to run against Paxton. And I called my sister up because my sister works at the courthouse there, and I knew Joe was a lawyer. And I asked her, I figured she knew him, and of course she did, and her significant other knows him very well. And anyway, so she hooked us up, and that's how we ended up, because I said, whatever you need in Collin County, I'm your girl. I'm here to help. So so that's how I got to know Joe. I mean, I know of him, but that's how I got to know him. And I have big feelings about our current Attorney General, and I am very, very motivated to see him get beat. Probably only, Joe Jaworski is probably the only person in the state of Texas more motivated than me for him to win. So anyway, so that's how I know him. Joe is a third generation Texas trial attorney and former mayor of Galveston, which we've talked about. Joe's term as mayor was defined by his support for and success in rebuilding Galveston's storm devastated public housing. And that I can tell you, that was a very big issue because there were a lot of people that lost their homes, and it was a politically fraught issue to rebuild that public housing. So I'm sure he will talk about that a little bit as well. Joe's grandfather, Watergate Special Prosecutor Leon Jaworski, took on President Nixon and Nixon's corrupt administration by fighting for justice in our nation's highest court. Leon Jaworski's legacy after Watergate, a family value which Joe honors daily, is no one is above the law, could not be more perfect for our times. This is why Joe is running for Texas Attorney General. In Texas, too many of our public officials think they are above the law, and the tearing down of our institutions has led to us to lose faith in our democracy. We need someone with character to perform the duties of Texas Attorney General without bias, and we need someone with the courage to stand up to the politically powerful. So now I introduce you to the Democratic candidate for Attorney General of the state of Texas, Joe Jaworski.
Wow. Sissy, thank you so much. And, you know, I was saying earlier, North Texas, good evening. But as it turns out, if you look at the chat, we've got people from all over the state. So, you know, Debbie, Sissy, Sarah, look what you've done. You've brought everyone together under the guise of a Zoom meeting. And I am so proud to be your guest tonight. So Texas, good evening. It's time for change.
Absolutely.
It's well overdue. So let's talk about it. Let me tell you who I am. I'm Joe Jaworski, and I am your candidate for Texas Attorney General. I'm the only declared Democratic candidate. Of course, the nomination isn't until another year, but I am out and about raising money, meeting people, and engaging in what we call the Joe Jaws Texas Tour 2021. And you can see the backdrop here. It's a little homage, if you will, to my old days as a rock and roller. You know, I would have graduated law school earlier, but I took 4 years off to play music, and it was a good time and a good decision, because you got to see America, you got to meet a lot of people, and frankly, putting a band out on the road, connecting city to city, well before cell phones, well before the internet, with nothing but a Rand McNally map and an intuitive sense of geography, is a great lesson in meeting America face to face. And you can do that in Texas. It's big enough to be its own nation, and many people consider it its own nation. But hey, we're not going to secede. That's not going to happen in America. And so we're going to certainly be standing for the rule of law on all such matters. So let me give you a little background about me. I am 59 years old next month. I'll be 60 on the date of the Texas primary in 2020. And, you know, my political sort of awakening might have been during my third year of law school. So there I was, my wife and I were married at this point. We both met in law school. And, you know, anyone who's a lawyer on this Zoom chat is going to tell you the same thing, that your third year of law school is pretty relaxed compared to the first year. So I was able to go out and do some grocery shopping during the day. So I went to Fresh Plus at 43rd and Duval, and oh my God, there she was in produce, the governor of the state of Texas, Ann Richards. And I was just starstruck. I went up to her. Now think about May 1991. She was 5 months into her term, and she probably was still doing the victory lap, and everything was good. And I went up to her and I said, "Oh, Governor, you know, please, I'd like to introduce myself." And I think my cousin Robert was with me, and we had a great conversation, 10, 15 minutes with her. She was so gracious and funny and witty. And, you know, here's what I thought. I thought, this is great. I'm about to graduate law school. I'm going to be a licensed attorney in a few months in a progressive state with a cool governor. The future is so bright. And then 1994 happened. And it's been downhill ever since. And, you know, I don't want to sit here before you all and say, like, oh boy, George W. Bush was so reasonable compared to what we have. Allen West, the Texas GOP chair, urging people to get behind the idea of secession, adopting a mantra, "We are the storm." Really? After January 6th? Are you kidding me? And so this is going to be the policy guru for the Republican Party. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, 2022 is going to be our year. And here's why. The paradigm of the blue wave, it's a great image, and I wish it were so. And we've been waiting for so long. But sometimes, you know, that metaphor may be a little ambitious. And hey, if it happens, trust me, I'm going to be up there cheering with all of you. But sometimes the transition from red to blue often goes through a purple phase. And if you look at a lot of states where this has happened that are now reliably blue, the change happened in the Attorney General's office first. And I think there may be a reason for that, you know, because when you have, you know, gubernatorial candidates and you have legislative candidates, you know, they're sort of expected to bring extreme solutions, and, you know, the extremists in their party like that. But who is always the keeper of the key where the box is that holds the rule of law? It's the Attorney General. And so I think often when we see people going beyond the pale and going below a par that is at least reasonable, that are in the Attorney General's office, they are exited first. And I think that's what's going to happen to Ken Paxton in 2022. And I'm going to be right there to make it happen with your help. I mean, just look at what he's done just in the last year. Forget for the moment his indictment, which he can't forget, and we shouldn't either. But in Collin County or Harris County, wherever the lawsuit is finally tried, he's going to have to stand before a jury. And he is in great criminal jeopardy, as Sissy is most aware. And it originated in her husband's court. And, you know, let me say this. His greatest jeopardy right now is in federal prosecution in San Antonio, in the Western District of Texas. And there is a separate civil whistleblower lawsuit that is going to unfold all the information. And just today in the whistleblower lawsuit, they filed an amended petition that divulged that the Texas Tribune immediately reported that Nate Paul is giving him a sweet deal on construction at his house. I mean, that is just a common felony, you know, that brings elected leaders down. And what I would say to you is he is not going to resign because his criminal defense lawyers won't let him. The House and the Senate won't impeach and try him because they need his extremist view to carry their redistricting water. So we're just going to have to remove him the old-fashioned way, which is the popular vote. Now, I think the Democratic nominee, if you have the right one, and I maintain that I am he, is going to be able to get Republican support in the general election to throw this guy out. I think the Republican Party is heading for a crack up, an internecine conflict where Allen West is here and Greg Abbott is here. And there probably will be a primary in Paxton's race, and it's going to be expensive and bloody. So we are going to be the adults in the room. And finally, this is how it happens. People are going to say, Democratic Party, what do you have to offer? And I think that if we show leadership and rule of law and integrity and transparency, people are going to say, can we please have that? Because that sounds like good government to me. And I think you just have to have a good candidate who's able to stand on his or her feet, and there will be other people running for offices. And I'll be so proud to partner with them. But that's why I think 2022 is going to be our year. And it's not just because, you know, all of a sudden everyone's enlightened. It's going to be after years of hard work of these clubs. And I want to congratulate you. It doesn't matter whether the Texas Democratic Party has fired and had to rehire staff. I mean, good for them. They're going to be there in some form or fashion. But it is the Democratic clubs all across the state, like the many that are here tonight, that are going to make the difference. I'm very excited by this. So it's my position that you can't beat Ken Paxton by running on a platform that is you're bad and I'm good, or you're a bad man, so you need to be beaten, because Donald Trump is a bad man and he got a lot of votes. And so people just get tuned into Republican versus Democrat. So I think a platform that speaks to people across the divide is important. And I want to share my platform with you. Now, we could have 20, 30, 40 issues and people are going to ask me about that, guns, immigration, abortion, and I've got positions on all of them. So, I always want to leave Q&A, time for questions and answers. And we're going to do that tonight too. But I have a 5-plank platform, if you will. And, we can add to it. It's like a Spotify music list, right? I think I'll just add another song. I'll add another song. And we can add to this platform, but it's got 5 points. And I think that's enough anytime it's a candidate standing on the stump. You want to give people food for thought. So here it is. And I want you to give me some feedback on this, okay? It's going to be on our website soon. So there's still an air of mystery about it. You're hearing it here for the first time. It goes something like this. As Texas Attorney General, I will never embarrass you in the United States Supreme Court. I won't file frivolous litigation in any court, state or federal. When Attorney General Joe Jaworski goes to war in court for Texas, it's going to be to protect Texas consumer rights, not to pull a political stunt. You have my word. Here's the next one. I will support the Affordable Care Act, period, paragraph. Big difference between me and Ken Paxton. When I'm elected and installed and sworn in, if that lawsuit is still on file, I will dismiss it day one. Now, here's what that really means. That means Texas is going to be encouraged and finally will draw down $5.6 billion a year in Medicaid so that we can insure families, men, women, and children, and we can sustain our struggling network of rural hospitals. I mean, everyone west of I-35, that's where they get their health care. It's really important for Texas. I think that's an issue that'll do well in the rural counties, because we're not going to let those margins happen that happened to Beto. Now here's one. It's kind of controversial, or is it? I think its time has come. And let me preface it by saying that when you're running for a constitutional statewide executive office, like the Texas Attorney General, you're not trying to be a legislator. I get that. But you're running statewide, and you can become a human referendum on an issue that's really important. Now, we've had brave senators and House members bring these bills, and they always get swatted down by the state leadership. So what if a statewide candidate ran on it and won, and then could be one of the first witnesses to testify about finally legalizing adult use, recreational purpose cannabis? Why? Well, number one, we'll raise $1.1 billion every biennium just taxing at the moderate Colorado rate. Now, Belle, are you still there? Yeah, the Colorado tax rate, it works for them. And we can hear from our brothers and sisters in Colorado how it works. There'll be 30,000 jobs, direct jobs, jobs that stay, not temporary. And I'm not even counting the construction jobs and the temporary jobs and the permitting and the licensing and the like. It's also going to offer a wellness alternative, a palliative to our veterans, to our war heroes, to our chronic pain sufferers, whatever their occupation, our military contractors, offering them an alternative to opioids so that finally Texas can fight a winning war against addiction. It's also important from a social and criminal justice reform perspective. Think about how many young lives, young men and women, predominantly of color, whose lives have been irreparably damaged. And this doesn't have to happen. It's a discretion in prosecutors and police, and it seems to always work against those of color predominantly, and it's just not fair. If we change the law on this, it will be a justice reform that is long overdue. And more importantly, think about freeing our prosecutors and our peace officers from this wasteful, petty prosecution and letting them put their skills to work fighting real crime, saving $300 million a year in the balance. You know, I mean, the bottom line is, some people say, hey, Joe, you know, we don't want our kids having access to this. And what about people, you know, driving cars and operating heavy machinery? Well, I mean, all the rules of common sense still apply. You know, nothing about this plan says that anybody should be doing this while working or driving or people under the age. Here's all I know. You can have the cartel making the money, or you can have Texas businesses making the money. And as far as children go, it's the same word with alcohol. I would much rather the barrier to their obtaining cannabis be in a well-lit retail establishment with a sign that says "We Card," as opposed to some alley in the dark on the bad side of town. As a former mayor, this next one is very meaningful to me. I will support cities, counties, school districts in their innovative approach to local government. You know, it used to be that the Republican Party knew what we all know, which is that the best government is local. You can have coffee with your mayor and your city council member, your commissioner, your superintendent. You can't go get coffee with Ken Paxton or Greg Abbott. Not that you'd want to, probably. But my point is, local government is the best because you elected these people, and it's all a local referendum. You know, it's weird. It's like the Republican Party is hating on our most basic sense of identity, our hometown. I can give you several examples. Up by you guys, Denton, where they banned fracking. Corpus Christi, a beautiful preserve for nature where they banned plastic bags. Galveston and Austin, lots of tourism, lots of driving in Uber, and the cities wanted a thicker layer of protection, a greater background check than what Uber offered. Kerr County on the Guadalupe River, where there's lots of mining and aggregate digging, they wanted to have some rules to preserve the water purity of the Guadalupe. And finally, Harris County, where acting clerk Chris Hollins was so innovative in addressing COVID and sending to every registered voter an application so that they could seek a ballot to vote by mail. All 5 of these I have just listed for you were found illegal. And Ken Paxton and Greg Abbott and the Texas Supreme Court all had a hand in that. So the fix is in. The Republican Party have abdicated once and for all, forever, their claim to the mantra that local government is best. And it's the same hypocrisy that we see with, oh, we're a low tax state. Well, statewide, you're low tax. You just put it all down on the counties. For example, we just talked about Medicaid, right? Well, indigent healthcare or healthcare for people that are earning less than some of us has to be paid somehow, doesn't it? It's coming out of your property tax bill if you're a homeowner, because counties are the last vestige. Their public health commissions and their public health officers are the ones who provide this care at the county hospitals. So here's my final point, and it's perhaps the most consequential because it goes to the heart of democracy. And I think I'd just like to tell it to you like this. I'm going to take Ken Paxton's voter fraud unit and I'm going to turn it into Joe Jaworski's voter access unit. Now think about that. Where do you go when you're being deprived of your right to vote, or the line is too long, or they closed the door too early, or they found that your signature didn't match when it clearly did? I mean, think about how you sign your credit card in those little machines at the grocery store. Well, where do you go? You go to your state party, you go to some election lawyer if you can get their attention. What if you could go to your own government and say, hey, make this fix, make this work? You can do that in the Joe Jaworski, Texas Attorney General's office. Well, that's my platform, such as it is. And what I'm asking, I don't want to stop my remarks without saying the obvious. Folks, I'm asking for your vote. And before the vote, I'm asking for your support. I'm asking for your help. We have a website, Jaworski4Texas.com, and that's FOR, Jaworski4Texas.com. It's got a lot of pictures of me and my family, and it's got the tour schedule for the JAWS tour. It's got our links to Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And most importantly, it's got a volunteer portal where you can put your name and your email in. And, you know, at some point, we're going to be passing things around, knocking on doors, making phone calls. Right now, it's my privilege to go to the Democratic clubs and look at what you've been able to do. I mean, there's 15 pages of 20 people. I mean, we have, I think, you know, close to 300 people. And what I would say finally on the money front, you know, it's just so exhausting when you get on these email lists and, you know, I gave, you know, $25 on Act Blue, and all of a sudden they've got your data. And, you know, it's a good problem to have. I mean, thank God for email, and, you know, it allows candidates to get through, but sometimes it's just a tidal wave of information. But what I would say is, look what Beto did. And, you know, I'm just a huge fan of his. And I just, you know, the way he was able to raise money that competed with the most obscene sort of corporate PAC was very empowering, I think, to all of us. And it sort of gave us hope that there was a new way to practice politics. And so what I'd ask you all to do is help me in that way. And the way I like to put it is, please give in a sum that is meaningful to you. Please give to my campaign in a sum that is meaningful to you. And some of you already have, and I'm so deeply grateful. And you'll always get a thank you note from me. It's like customer service, you know. Can you handle that part? You know, candidates, can you respond? Can you be in touch? So I've got an email on the website, joe@Jaworski for Texas. When I was mayor, I had this fantasy, and I did it, which was to give everybody my cell phone. Now, you know, that's pretty ambitious, but you can get in touch with this campaign and we will respond to you. We really will. Callie Brown is my campaign coordinator, and she is on the call, and we are going to be accessible to Texas. We're going to be accountable to Texas. Guys, I'm telling you what, this is not a career move. This is a public service move for me. And I've been blessed to be a lawyer. And yes, my grandfather is Leon Jaworski, a man who, you know, was born here, but his dad came over from Germany in 1902. Yeah, we're immigrants, okay? And we're proud of it. They left Bremen, they went to Baltimore, then St. Louis, and then they came to Texas. He's best known in Seguin, where he's buried, my great-grandfather, Joseph Jaworski. And his son, Leon, solved a constitutional crisis. And he was a sober as a judge attorney and was able to really help Texas and America when the time came. I would like to live that family value, and I'm up for it. You know, it means something to me. We all knew our grandfather very well. He was not just some elder that I didn't know well. I lived with him my freshman year of college. I knew him, loved him, and I want to emulate him. And in my career, I've done that. I've tried. So put me to work, folks. I'm here for you. Imagine a Texas Attorney General that represents the people rather than takes money from the highest bidder and simply turns his back. I mean, it could be a new day in Texas government. And what a wonderful way to achieve the promise that I thought was there for us in 1991 when I saw Governor Richards in the produce section. It's just
Excellent.
right there. It's just right there. So let's do it. Thank you so much, Debbie.
That was great. That was great. Well, we have a whole slew of questions, but at some of them, I think you've really already answered. I mean, I think you've hit a lot of the points that people are really concerned about, but we have a few that you haven't. One, and this is kind of a combination. What is your vision for the role of the Attorney General, and what would a normal AG do? I don't think we have
what would it
those right now. And also, how would you rebuild the office? Because the morale, I would imagine, has taken a huge hit from those attorneys, you know, the hundreds of attorneys that work for the AG. So what is your mission, vision, and how would you be as a boss?
Oh, Sissy, what a great question. And thank you for that. So let me tell you, I mean, I don't think it's a secret, and I'm not able to tell you any names, but I'm actually getting phone calls, and I'm not saying just one phone call and I'm extrapolating from that. I mean, multiple people that are current employees of the Office of Texas Attorney General are contacting me. I mean, they're not whistleblowing, they're just complaining, and I'm empathetic. They say the morale is horrible. Raises for the paralegals has been suspended to pay for whatever Paxton's dalliances are, his frivolous lawsuits. I mean, I mean, that's that's one thing we have to remember. There's 4,200 plus employees, like 800 lawyers. And so it's a massive organization. It is not exaggeration to say it is Texas's largest law firm. No question about it. And so you have to sort of be a good leader. So I would tell you this, Sissy, number one, I would get in there and create a leadership council. That is all the people that he fired recently because they blew the whistle on him because they were so horrified by his conduct. But my leadership council is going to first be extremely talented attorneys, but it's also going to reflect the face of Texas. It's not going to be all Caucasian, okay? That's what I mean. Let's be real clear about this. I want to give rise to young talent, men and women of color, of all skill and age and race and creed. It's a great way to show Texas that we're not in 1950 anymore. The second thing I think I would do is be more accessible around the state. I mean, when Paxton was first elected, he didn't even live in Austin. I mean, he just stayed home in Collin County, which is kind of weird because the Constitution is very clear that the Attorney General shall reside in Travis County, in Austin. And, you know, of course, now he's bought a house that Nate Paul's helping construct. So I think he's got all his priorities messed up. But all kidding aside, being accessible like I was when I was mayor, you can count on energy coming from this Attorney General and a positive attitude. I'm not going to be a burr under the saddle of the Biden administration. I'm going to let federal leaders do their job. And I'm going to protect Texans. You know, I'd like to take a look at what health insurance is doing on the mental health front. Are they paying what they should? That's one right there. Sissy?
That's great. That's great. Can you see any reasons to sue the federal government? Is there a reason to sue the federal government?
Oh, I mean, sure. You know, I would think so, but you know, in the abstract, of course. And, you know, Texas can sue constitutionally for, any number of reasons, if an executive order, is unconstitutional. But what I see Paxton doing is he's virtue signaling
Right.
to reach the Fox base. And like I told you in the early part of the meeting, I don't know that I said this while everyone was on, the Jaworski campaign outraised the Paxton incumbency over the last 6 months. I raised 330,000. He raised 305. And I mean, I know it's just so insider to talk about the money, but we're going to use money to create ads and get in front of people. And we're going to say something quite exciting, I think, and it's going to be different than a lot of the ads you've seen. But the only way he even got close was by filing that frivolous SCOTUS action in December, which lasted all of 5 days before it was unceremoniously punted unanimously by the judges. But before they did, Trump or his organization sent an email out, and he raised like $200,000 in small dollar donations from Trump supporters because they believed this was the big one, I think is what they called it. It's just outrageous.
Yeah, absolutely. Why? I assume there'll be more candidates in the Democratic primary field. That's a pretty safe assumption. Why should Democratic primary voters elect you? And should you win the primary, what is your strategy to beat Ken Paxton?
So Democratic primary voters should vote for Joe Jaworski because Joe can win a general election. The two questions really are related. And so first off, I would say former mayor with bipartisan support because I was a nonpartisan leader. Number two, 31 years as an attorney, both defense and plaintiff's work, and now respected mediator, someone who knows how to bring warring sides together, but also born of a trial lawyer's skill set. I also think that, the family legacy matters, whether you put it down as name recognition or just sort of what are your values of what public service should look like. Look, guys, I'm coming at this not to start a career in politics, but to sort of offer my skill set that has been, learned over 30 plus years as a professional for the public good. And I think that that's going to come through. What if it were about public service again? And I think I can raise the money. I can raise the money, and I've already raised, I think, 425,000 now. And our goal is to have 1 million. And so you hold me to it. With your help, I'll be able to do that. And of course, there's small dollar donations, and then there's larger dollar donations. So people get behind the movement. We're going to be able to show that we'll be able to reach voters all across the state. Now, let me segue by saying, how do you win the general? By starting now. We are reaching out to rural Texas and talking about issues that affect rural Texas. I think cannabis production is something where everyone can make some money out of it. They like that. I think broadband is something that is lacking out in West Texas. LBJ is well known for the electric, the rural electrification of rural Texas back in the 20s. Well, the version of that now is broadband. We just talked about schools and Medicaid. Telehealth is a great way for people to be able to connect with their doctors. And if they don't have access to a good signal, it isn't going to happen. So this is something that I think rural Texas can benefit from. And we're not going to just focus on the cities. So Joe Jaworski is going to be able to be a Democrat in the rural counties, as well as reaching Republicans there as well. It's a blend. And then I just think, Ken Paxton, we're the first ones out, guys. I'm the first one, and we are now coming to the clubs, and we are, calling Ken Paxton out for his behavior, writing op-eds being published in newspapers. The Texas Signal just did a good article about our campaign. So it matters to come out first.
100%. And Erica Greider did quite the nice piece on you that kicked the whole thing off. That was, you've definitely gotten some really good press.
Yeah, back in September. Absolutely. You're right.
What is your stance on holding police accountable as it relates to the murder and killings of unarmed Black, brown men and women? And I'll preface that by saying that's really not the Attorney General's job, but I know that it matters to a lot of people, so I'll go ahead and ask it.
No, great question. And, you know, the Attorney General should let county and district attorneys do their job. I mean, by the Constitution, original criminal investigative powers do not rest with the Attorney General, but can be exercised if requested, if invited by the local authorities. But what I would say is it's happening, and it's now finally out on the front page, and we still yet see it happening. So, you know, as Attorney General, I'm going to be a sympathetic voice, not one that turns my back. Well, you know, let's find a reason to explain why this person needed to be shot. I think that that law enforcement at this point must be feeling a little embattled themselves, because they just never were questioned. And now people are questioning because of technology. You know, we have film, we have people that are both on their cameras, but also people that are witnesses filming. And you know, the cat's out of the bag finally, and it has to be addressed. So the Attorney General can be a leader on this issue, Sissy. I think the best way to do it is to bring TCLOS, you know, the Texas Commission of Law Enforcement, and other similar groups into sort of a partnership where we're talking about it before it happens, and saying, like, you know, don't protect the bad police officers on your force. I think if there's one substantial rule that should change, is that if a police officer is fired for misconduct by any local authority, that they should not be able to be hired again if a certain test is met. And I'm not going to write that test right now, but that's usually what happens, is people will commit a outrage and they get fired, and then they'll just go to another police force. And that's where I think a lot of the problems happen. You know, it's the same kind of thing with guns. You know, people that clearly have mental health issues or felony convictions, they're still getting guns. You know, how is that? Why is that? So with police officers that commit violence and clearly have no right or skill to be a peace officer, they need to be taken out of consideration for later jobs.
Okay. What are your thoughts on Black Lives Matter?
Oh boy, it is a movement, an organization. It is a sentiment. It's an awakening. And you know, it's just amazing, you know, how it's Black Lives Matter, and then the comeback is all lives matter. Well, what does that mean? And so, you know, life matters, yeah, but Black lives mean, Black BLM means that there is a double standard. And what are we going to do about it? I think talking about it, and law enforcement is where, you know, the punishment is witnessed every day in urban streets. You know, when George Floyd was killed, how is it that he was treated that way? And you know, now we hear, oh, it was the fentanyl that really did him in, not the police officer's knee on his neck for, you know, multiple minutes. To me, that's defeating the whole concept. So Black Lives Matter is something that needs to be taken seriously, and people can just be a little more empathetic, you know, and have a conversation. I think when statewide leaders actually give voice to that, and let there be an assembly, I think is a good word, where people are actually talking about it, listening and doing something about it and changing some rules, then perhaps the heat will lower somewhat and we can just get about living together.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Often Black, and you touched on this a little bit, but often Black and brown folks are criminalized more harshly with marijuana laws than other ethnicities, although research shows all ethnicities consume marijuana at the same rate. What are your thoughts to address this disparity?
Well, as far as cannabis goes, you know, I say go whole hog, and you know, let's legalize recreational use cannabis, because, you know, as I said in my remarks, there is a predominance of young lives of color where the arrests are happening, and it clearly burdens their life at an early age, and then productivity is limited going forward. So, you know, that's the answer is, quit arresting people for it, and cities are awakening to it, and certain prosecutors in certain urban areas are, able to create different policies decriminalizing it. I say that is only, a third of the distance we need to go. There should be, the financial aspect, the wellness aspect, the social justice aspect, and then let criminal law focus on real crime. So my answer would be, this is resolved by my platform plank of recreational cannabis legalization.
Okay. And then one more question, and then we're gonna take some audience questions. What are your thoughts? And this is something that's actually I've been really researching lately, and it's
Okay.
terrifying. What are your thoughts on the threat that Christian nationalism has had on democracy? And is there anything you would be able to do in your role as Attorney General to address that?
Wow, what a question. And so Ken Paxton spends a lot of his time enforcing Christian values through the courts. And, I mean, I'm a Presbyterian confirmed, at the age of 14, and my children went to Episcopal school, and I really appreciate Bible passages. It's all fine. And I'll do that on my own time. Thank you very much. And, I think that there are so many world religions that are practiced in Texas that the idea that one gets predominance over the others is unconstitutional. And so I think, if you want to go back to the purest sense of what an attorney general should do, it is enforce the rule of law. And the whole concept that, well, we're going to force Christian values on everyone through government, well, it's just like facially unconstitutional. You can't do that. You can't pick one. That's the whole thing. That's left to the individual to pick. So going back to what real values in government are: local government, individualism, freedom. Sounds like we've got a better organization on the Democratic side.
Yes, absolutely. And the Christian nationalism is really at the heart of Paxton, of people like him, and of the problems that we just watched in the past month.
And look, I hope to debate him. I mean, I'm going to demand it. He deserves to be debated. And if he brings any of that up, he's going to have to talk about his private life. I mean, I don't want to get ugly about it here, but this whole situation where, it really is like, we're better than you. And, Jesus says so. And that is offensive to me in a government posture that can't be allowed to continue. Be Christian, be Muslim, be whatever your heart tells you, your conscience tells you, but don't let the government be a partner in that decision.
All right. Now, Debbie, I'm going to ask you, do we have questions from the audience?
Yes, I just sent you one in the chat.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I can ask it.
Yeah,
go ahead
if you'd
like.
I'm not seeing it. Sorry.
Okay. That's okay. That's okay. Let me scroll back up. I mean, basically the gist of the question was that, would you support amnesty for those who are already serving time for possession of marijuana?
I saw that that someone had said this doesn't address that issue. There's got to be, I think so. I mean, I would like to see some numbers on that, but it just doesn't make sense. I mean, why should you still be in prison if, the whole moot point has been mooted? I think, if there's other crimes that you have committed, a lot of times when policy changes, you consider, you don't hearken back to, it's like ex post facto. There's some legal doctrines that are involved here. But, if someone has just been put in prison for the very thing that has been made decriminalized and legal, then if that's all there is, then, they have to be allowed to leave. They have to be freed. But if there's, other crimes that were committed, then obviously those take precedence, and you'd have to address that in the criminal justice system.
Okay, we do have several people with their hands up in the chat. So I'd like to, hopefully they're still on and paying attention. I'd like to see if Jenna Royal would like to ask her question. And then next we'll go with Serna and Audrey Peterson. So Jenna, are you available?
Yes, I'm
All
right here. Hi, Joe. My name is Jenna Royal. And in 2020, I was the political director for a large organization that financially invested very heavily in elections in Texas. The election went the way that it went, but where we found our biggest wins were where we invested heavily in volunteer and grassroots organizing. Shout out to Moms Demand Action. So I was wondering what your plan for mobilizing, organizing volunteers and grassroots organizations and the Democratic clubs around the state to reach areas, because Texas is huge, it's super diverse, and to be able to run a really successful statewide campaign, you have to be able to harness the power of all of these different areas. So what is y'all's plan? What's your field plan is essentially the question.
We don't, I don't know that I have a paper to hand you, but it's one that needs to be written soon. I would tell you that something different than what you may have heard in the past is that we are not seeding the rural counties. Now, not all of them, but I'm going to tell you that we are going to have ground game in the top 40 populated rural counties. And what I mean by that is counties that are not within the MSA or general area of the large cities. And I think that so Jeff Hewitt, proud to say, is my campaign consultant. And apparently that's the new term of art for the top staff. And we are carefully investigating the top 40 counties from the 2018 and 2020 elections. I think Trump not being on the ballot is going to be helpful. And I have some anecdotal evidence on that I'll share from Galveston, Texas. But ground game is a big deal, and we're going to have it. But the two things that I want you to take away from this meeting is that we're going to be in the top 40 rural counties, and that's why we're doing this tour right now. And we're going to be big in the Rio Grande Valley. Okay, I speak Spanish for whatever that matters. And I speak it fluently because that was my major in college. And as a lawyer, I've had the privilege of representing men and women, Mexican Americans who don't speak English. They need help too. And I was proud to represent them in their personal injury actions. And of course, you really learn the language when it's time to talk about the settlement. And you can really argue with your clients in a very productive, positive way. It's a privilege to speak an extra language. I wish more people did it. My great grandfather actually spoke like 6 or 7 languages because he came from Europe, And again, that's just one of those things. Why is it that people find, speaking several languages to be some sort of, elitism? It's not. It's communication. But the ground game is a big deal. If you would like to have my cell phone number, I would love to talk to you about it. I'm serious. Yeah, please, because I mean, you, Jenna, I'm first off, I know who you are, and I know what you've done, and it was most impressive. And so, please understand, I respect you, and I don't have all the answers, but those are two things that I want you to take away: that we are not just going to focus on urban, and we are going to focus on the top 40 populated rural counties and the Rio Grande Valley, where I have a lot of connections.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Serna, would you please unmute yourself and ask your question? Serna?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so just bear with me. I'm not as privileged to have all the titles and acknowledgments that y'all have as attorneys and whatnot. I'm just a mom on a crusade at this point. I'm gonna go ahead and just call it that, to save my daughter right now, and I've been looking for help to do so. I ran across this campaign, and in reading what you read out loud, Miss Oldner, I hope I said that correctly, where he is, running and feels like no one is above the law. I feel like I'm at David and Goliath point. I'm trying to take on Judge Emily Miskell, who ran unopposed in Collin County, because she ruled for standard possession and my daughter was taken away, who just turned 5 months. I had to turn her over to her dad and family who she'd never lived with. So everything that you mentioned, I agree with 100%, but at this very point, I'm in this personal battle and I'm wanting to know how you would be able to help me. I understand at this point, the Office of the Attorney General just intervenes on behalf of the state. I'm pro se. I didn't go to law school. I drafted my own petition on my own. I'm kind of all over the place with this. I wasn't aware of a lot of the statutes and things that take place and how many, rights are given to a non-custodial parent simply by having signed a acknowledgement of paternity. So I feel kind of selfish and bringing my point to y'all, but in this same case, I am worried about other children that don't have a mom like me that are willing to advocate for my daughter, who she's ruling against, ruling and presiding over and slapping standard possession across the board. And I want to know how many other minority children have had to suffer at her hands because they don't have anyone to speak for them or to advocate for them.
Well, Serna, I get calls from people who have dilemmas like this, and you don't have to be the Attorney General to offer you help. I mean, as a private attorney, I am very moved by what you're telling me. And can you let me know? I mean, you obviously need representation. You can't do this by yourself. They're taking advantage of you.
Yeah, I'm fighting an upstream, battle at this point.
And what occurs to me is that the state of Texas is doing the bare minimum that the Constitution requires of due process by providing for a network and of state attorneys or that will be paid for that if you are under criminal charges. And I wonder about the deeper question of raising our children when someone like yourself requires representation. The state makes no provision for it, and you just appear legally naked, if you will, before the judge, and you just throw yourself on the mercy of the court. That's wrong. What I'd like to see is in the courts of all 254 counties, there's always a family judge, and sometimes these happen in county courts as well, that there ought to be some sort of minimum representation available to you. Now, of course, you can go to legal aid and stand in line with everybody else. Have you tried to do that?
I haven't done so, only because of a conflict. Again, this is another issue that is not just for myself, but as financially indigent people are kind of stuck between two passing ships almost, because I can't take off from work to do that, and then because that increases my financial burden that is already there. So I'm torn, and the time that I do have, in the evenings between, caring for her, I'm reading all these statutes and trying to draft things up on my own, and I'm concerned because, like what you mentioned, is we're kind of in this purple wave where I've done everything possibly as far as volunteer since I was young. You mentioned the Rio Grande Valley. I lived in Cameron County. I reached out to, and I've spoken to Judge Gano. I've tried to get my voice heard, not just like I said, and I cannot stress this enough, not just for my daughter, but unfortunately it took this to catch the attention that this judge is a GOP judge who is very uncaring in regards to the well-being of children.
And her name is Emily Miskell?
Yes, she's in the 480th
Okay.
District Court.
Okay. What you need, I'm going to tell you this, Serna, and I'm happy to talk to you offline. Again, it's one of the obligations of Texas attorneys to provide a pro bono network for those who cannot afford it, because it has become expensive. And the State Bar of Texas requires people to acknowledge pro bono. What you need is an attorney in that county. The SMU Law Clinic, I see someone putting in the chat here, has able, eager attorneys that will go to battle for you. When I was a young attorney, I represented a homeless man who was arrested by the police, and he felt that he was being arrested unconstitutionally, and I filed a lawsuit in court, in federal court. There are thousands of underpurposed, talented young attorneys in the state of Texas, and somebody can help you. I'm just confident of it. So maybe I can talk to you on the phone.
And we can put her in touch with legal aid as well. That is really who she needs to talk to. I mean,
Agreed.
desperately, she needs to talk
Serna,
to.
yeah, you can't do this by yourself.
No, absolutely, 100%. Audrey Peterson, I think you have had your hand up for a while. Can you unmute yourself? There you go. Go ahead, Audrey.
Okay, thank you very much. This actually is going to segue into what Ms. Serna just was talking about. I think one of the greatest challenges of our justice system right now is access to justice. I think our most underprivileged Texans can't afford lawyers and getting to the courts. And I do know that the Attorney General's office has kind of oversees child support cases, consumer protection matters. I'm just sort of curious what policies or ideas you have about how do you as the Attorney General get help to people that need it, that are within your role as the Attorney General?
Wow. Oh, what a great opportunity. That is something that you don't see right now in the cutthroat world of Ken Paxton. It would never occur to him to go down to the level of real people. He's much more about ideology and campaign contributions. So, Audrey, what a great idea you've given me, that actually the new Attorney General could be a thought leader and an inspiration for a new generation of attorneys, where access to justice is a value. Now, the State Bar of Texas, has a commission for that, and the State Bar of Texas does encourage all attorneys to report pro bono hours. But, when government gets behind it, that makes a difference. And I think that, where do you need it? You don't necessarily need it so much in personal injury, because there's an economic aspect where, there's lots of hungry lawyers that'll take that case on contingency. And the government will provide you a court-appointed attorney. That's the term I was having a little trouble remembering a moment ago. A court-appointed attorney on the public dime to represent you if you are indigent and can't defend yourself in a criminal setting. But family law, I remember doing several family law cases, Serna and Audrey, when I was a young attorney, and it was done pro bono. So access to justice is needed in the family context and in the consumer context. If you get ripped off, well, what are you going to do about it? Right? I got your money in my hand. Next. So those would be two things where people are constantly being taken advantage of or suffering in a government court that they have to go to, but they are ill prepared to defend themselves because they can't afford it. So, Audrey, you've given me a great idea. Access to justice. Attorney General could simply make that a priority. Maybe I'll just start talking about that in these meetings we're going to. So thank you for that inspiration.
Thanks for the answer. Thanks for the time tonight too.
Oh, you bet.
Okay, Joe, we've had another question come up, and you touched on it a little bit with talking about speaking Spanish, but we saw a real decline in Hispanic support of the Democratic ticket in Texas, which was, it's very disconcerting for us activists. What would your campaign do to reactivate Hispanic Democrats and to bring them home to the Democratic Party?
So, I was shocked by the results after November 3rd as well. And I went down to Brownsville, Cameron County, as Serna said earlier, and Hidalgo County, on December 10th and 11th, and met with Trey Mendez, the mayor of Brownsville, and you know, the Lucios and Trey Benavides, and I've set up an opportunity to go down there like every 2 months or so. What I would say is I also spoke to Cecilia Bali, who is a thought leader interviewing Mexican American and Latino voices as to what happened, and the results are in. It was that Trump succeeded in poisoning the well and using the phrase, you know, ban fracking, defund the police, and it is a very conservative culture, even though typically voting Democratic. And when the Valley heard defund the police, they felt like their jobs were at risk, because there are a lot of men and women in security down there working for the Border Patrol and police, and it's a point of pride that they are Americans working in a law enforcement position. And the idea that there would be the Democrats are out to undo it all is what connected with some percentage of the vote. The banning fracking, well, there's a lot of oil and gas down there. And so, you know, it's a very unthoughtful way to have the debate, because no one's banning fracking. You know, AG should cite polluters and sue them if they're poisoning people's well water. That's more important than oil, you know, but no one's banning oil and gas production overnight. So what I would say to you is, the third is that there was a punishment for some of the candidates who simply were just showing up right at the end saying, hey, let me have your vote. So the way around this is Trump won't be on the ballot to go straight to the heart of security and job protection, and then be down there regularly. Don't just be a stranger and show up with a dinner 30 days before election and say, here, you know, vote for this man. And I think going to the Valley and caring and just putting in the shoe leather is going to make a difference. Quick point, Sissy. I do think Trump not being on the ballot is going to be a big deal. And, you know, my anecdote that I kept referring to but never finishing in Galveston is this. Galveston has its elections in May. It's one of the uniform election dates. Well, because of COVID, you know, Abbott pushed all the elections from May to November. So for the first time ever, the open seat for Galveston mayor was going to be held in November. Well, one guy just decided, hey, Trump's on the ballot. Now I'm on the ballot with Trump. And he came out and said, I'm a Republican. So the first time ever, breaching the unspoken code that these are nonpartisan elections, he said, oh no, I'm a Republican. He even had the Galveston County Republican Party print all his literature. I mean, it said it right on there, paid for, Galveston County Republican Party. He almost won on November 3rd, like with 47% in a 5-way race. The good guy, the good guy, we'll call him, came in a distant second. And this was repeated, Sissy, in several district races that were on the same ballot. 30 days later, when the runoff happened in December, all the good guys, we'll call them, won by handy margins. And they almost all lost outright without a runoff. And so, you know, something happened 30 days later, and it's that Donald Trump wasn't on the ballot. So I don't want to like overemphasize that, but it did make a difference.
No, that's good to know. That's good. So Quiroga was Trump's guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, Quiroga went full Republican.
Okay. All right. Good to know. Good to know. Okay, Camille, you have had your hand up. Would you unmute yourself and ask your question, Camille?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Very well, thank you so much. So I worked with the Texas hotline, and I also worked with the Georgia hotline. And
Nice.
We had an amazing job just securing ballots and just getting those votes out and just working. So I just wanted to ask you, Joseph, what are we going to do about just getting mobilizing all of us? We really have to get organized and get together, just get ready to just touch people, no solamente con los Latinos. We have to get just all the votes that we really need to get moving and just get people registered and just get the connections and that you got the relationships so that we can get them moving. So what can we do to help you? Las comadres from Comal County.
Muchas gracias, Camille.
Gracias a ti.
Es un placer conocerle. What I'd say is that, you know, we are a force to be reckoned with, and we have always been very nice and, you know, kind of worked and not really gone for the throat. And I got to tell you, the Democrats are going to do it this time, because we almost had our democracy destroyed on January 6th. And, you know, I'm not going to blame the Republican Party. It's just like, you know, I mean, they know who they are. They know what they did, you know, and they know what Trump did. The question is, are they going to reject all that? Well, let's don't wait for an answer on that. The Democratic Party is ascendant. We are strong and we are together. And so, you know, Beto is doing a great job with Powered by People. And, you know, Stacey Abrams, by the way, got her degree at the LBJ school at University of Texas. So, you know, maybe she'll come home, you know, and help us. Seriously, I mean, what a hero. And I think, Camille, your question is very timely. And so, you know, just we are essentially a year and a half away from D-Day. And that's plenty of time to get it right. I'm just becoming inspired. I'm taking close notes on all these things that the questions are offering. And I think organization is what I'm hearing. There is a thirst for organization. We don't want to lose again. And think about what happens. Here's the one gift Ken Paxton gives us, is he's nationalized the race. It's too late to take it back. He has nationalized the race by being the guy who's going to sue the Biden administration every chance he gets. And what a lousy candidate for that. So there are people, including the Lincoln Project, looking at our race. There are going to, you know, how much money went into Georgia that made the difference. But the question is, what are you going to do with the money? That's your question. And so, Camille, I'm just here to promise you, I have a feeling it's going to be like a hose, like a very fast gushing hose, and we have to organize. We have to be willing to do that. And these statewide races are where it's going to happen. I know I'm not going to be alone. There's going to be someone running for governor, lieutenant governor. So we will organize, I promise.
All right. Craig, you've had your hand up for a while. Craig Peterson.
Yep.
There you go.
Okay. So mine may not be as serious as some of the other ones, but yesterday, Dan Patrick introduced a bill for making the national anthem to be required to be played before any publicly funded event. I don't know, as Attorney General, if that falls into something that violates some type of law or some protection, such, you know, or is it on par with, say, you know, school prayer or something like that? And is it something that as AG could intervene in, or in anything similar to like that? Or,
well, I mean, Craig, you know, great for flagging that one. I mean, again, virtue signaling. You know, like this is going to improve people's lives and put money in their pocket if we sing the national anthem. I mean, most people do, okay? Mm-hmm. And you know, if who's the Dallas Mavericks owner?
Mark Cuban.
Thank you, Mark Cuban. If Mark Cuban owns that team and that's how he wants to operate his private, you know, sports, you know, entertainment, which is what it is. Well, who's going to tell him otherwise? I mean, I just find it outrageous. I'm sure that what Dan Patrick would say is, well, public money was spent on financing your stadium. So now that you've accepted public money, you have to, you know, sing the national anthem because I say so. I mean, it's just bizarre. I mean, most people say it because they're patriotic and, you know, and it's a great thing. And schools do it and, you know, people do it before all events. If Mark Cuban doesn't want to, I mean, people can stop buying tickets. It's his choice. So anyway, to answer your question, I don't know that the Attorney General is going to get involved in that because I guarantee it's not going to pass. I mean, I just don't think that's going to pass as a law. It's a total waste of time when people are dying of COVID and we don't draw down Medicaid and people are being denied the vote. You know, it's just another thing to get people rallied around.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Joe. Here, I have one that was actually submitted by my husband. What would you, is there anything that the Attorney General's office is doing right now?
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I will say, you know, he fired all the whistleblowers, which means the whistleblowers sued him. And I will say that the lawyer he hired is a really good lawyer, getting paid $530 an hour. He fired the Google in-house lawyer on salary who was going to file that antitrust case. He fired him. So the talent was gone. And the lawyer he hired at great expense, who's going to get a huge contingency fee, is a great lawyer. So he's actually doing a really good job of hiring the lawyers that he's having to hire because he fired everybody, but he's having to pay our tax dollars for it. So he's kind of screwing up. But all kidding aside, I told you there's 4,200 employees plus, and there are some wonderful staff career attorneys there. And they do a great job of protecting the public's interest in charitable lawsuits. They do a great job of approving public finance bonds. And Ken Paxton cannot take credit for this. I mean, it's been there. Any attorney general just needs to be a good manager of the work. And so I'll give them that bonds are being approved, charitable trusts are being preserved, child support is being disseminated throughout the system, and there's probably a lot of inefficiencies because I don't see how this guy can really focus on leading such a large institution when he has to be worrying every night about whether he's going to get a call from this criminal defense lawyer saying, I think the time to resign is now because I can get you a deal that'll keep you out of prison.
Okay, all right, that's good. Well, we're going to take one more question. Jeff Quiggle, you had your hand up.
Hey, Jeff.
Awesome. Hey, how's it going, Joe? Good.
I'm good, buddy.
Good to meet you.
You bet.
So you mentioned earlier when you were talking about marijuana legalization, the benefit to veterans, and that's certainly a big deal, in particular for Vietnam era vets and more recent vets from Afghanistan and Iraq and other areas. What else can you do specifically for Texas veterans? I'm a veteran. I see a few of my fellow veterans on this call right now. What else can you do to help veterans?
There's again, I think the state bar, Jeff, thank you for that. The state bar does good veteran legal services, hotline, and I think kind of like access to justice, there can be more of that, and the attorney general should probably bring them under his wing if there's a access to justice movement within the AG's office. There probably needs to be a special side to the veterans because they have a lot of mental health issues and a lot of illnesses that they need to deal with, and I would also say that it's a federal question of the Veterans Administration, but I think Texas has, because we're one of the biggest states, has one of the biggest veteran populations, Jeff, and obviously you know that. So I would say being a liaison to veterans would be an opportunity because, like I told you earlier, my mediation practice is Defense Base Act cases. And I mean, I would say 90% of private military contractors are veterans. They just said, okay, I'm no longer enlisted. Let's go, pay some of the debt off that I've incurred in my life and let's make some money because, my skill set applies to the war on terror and holding the line in Afghanistan and Syria. So I feel a real kinship with them. And I always start every mediation soberly telling them how grateful I am that while my children were playing and we were enjoying movies and going about our business in America, that they were putting their lives on the line and risking their safety and their oftentimes their mental health to keep us safe because the government sent them there. And even though they choose to go there, these military contractors, they're doing a job because we don't draft anymore. And that's the only way we hold the line with our military policy is to supplant or, amend and increase the numbers by using contractors. So, I mean, Jeff, maybe you can help me by giving me some thoughts of something that you think, but I think as an attorney general who is a lawyer and is representing sort of law enforcement, a mental health aspect and an access to justice aspect would probably be the ways I would intersect with veterans.
All right. Listen, I really appreciate everyone's time on here tonight. And Joe, I am so happy you were able to join us. This was really, really great. But I now want to turn this back over to Debbie O'Reilly with Wow Dems to close it out. And and I know they did also ask for you to put your email address in the chat.
Yes, absolutely.
That
I'm going to do that right now. Joe at Jaworski for Texas.com. Joe at Jaworski4Texas.com. Bam.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, Debbie, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you, Sissy. I thought you did a wonderful job tonight, Sissy. Thank you. She's a member of McKinney area Democrats as well as WOW Dems. So thank you for moderating tonight. And thank you to everybody who joined us. I'm just so inspired by all of the amazing questions and the enthusiasm. We thought that Mr. Jaworski did a fantastic job. I mean, I've been texting club presidents and people from WOW are texting me and they're like, oh my goodness, he's fantastic.
All night long.
Yeah, I mean, my phone's blowing up. So you've done a great job, Mr. Jaworski. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, so look what you've done for me. I mean, you make me a better candidate by putting me on the firing line here. And these were all excellent questions. And the vast knowledge that I'm going to have to absorb from your experience and then translate into something that government can actually do to help people's lives in Texas is such a great challenge, but it's one that I heartily accept because I'm just so tired of government being such a disappointment. And I know you share that with me. So God, thank you so much for helping me be a better candidate and hopefully office holder.
Well, the pleasure was all ours. And speaking for, the club presidents who've organized this meeting, for the participants, we still have 200 people on the call right now. So you've held your audience. That's fantastic.
Hey, all right.
So thank you. And I don't have to say this because I think it's all understood. I highly encourage you to support Mr. Jaworski in any way that you can if you feel like you were moved by what he had to say. Our event tonight does not mean that our clubs necessarily endorse Mr. Jaworski, but I think we can all say that he did a fantastic job and we were all better for the experience. So please, if you liked what you heard, go to his website and volunteer and donate. I would also encourage you to go to the link for the City Club where you live. If you live locally, I know that we have people from all over the state and frankly all over the country on this tonight. So I'll ask the club presidents to throw their link in the chat one more time. Join your local Democratic organization and donate. And we'll also provide another opportunity. Like I said, Mr. Jaworski provided his email. I know he'd be happy to answer any other questions. We'll provide this link to this meeting on YouTube and on our Facebook page, and also share it with the other clubs who have hosted this evening as well. So thank you everybody for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Debbie, Sissy, everybody, thank you so much.
All right. Good
Thanks
night.
for your time. Good night.
Good night. Stay safe.
That went pretty well, huh? What do y'all think?
Yeah, and I saved the chat because we had a lot of really good information in there and a
Good.
lot of contacts from other local clubs or even statewide clubs as well. So that was really exciting.
Fantastic. Good idea. And I wish I could have, I don't know what happened with the, I'm going to stop recording actually.